Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman. Hello, all you sex fiends out there, and welcome back after the lovely holiday. I hope everybody enjoyed their Thanksgiving and whatever way made you happy. We got time to either virtually or actually spend some quality time with your family. It has been difficult with the lovely increase in COVID, but that doesn't mean that you cannot celebrate all the same. But sex is still on the table. And that should have not gone away. So, I am back, you are back, and I did enjoy some good turkey. Well, we're going to get down to a sex topic of sexual dominance or mind control, anything that goes inside of that. You may go in submissive. You may do this or that. It's not always just BDSM when going about this. Obviously, if you want to go a little bit more hardcore, please educate, communicate, and consent to it. Just saying. So now, obviously, a little bit of a definition of how it is being defined, which is dominance and submission is a set of behaviors, customs, and rituals involving the submission of one person to another in an erotic episode or lifestyle. Obviously, the subset to that is the BDSM. Now, this form of sexual contact and pleasure has been shown to please a minority of people. I'm sure there's more people out there. For purposes of today's show, we're just going to go into a little bit of the beginner's guide and some different ways, and talk about some mind control in there as well. So let's get this party started. Now, the beginner's guide to sexual submission. Obviously, toys are involved and highly recommended. So what is sexual submission? Really, exactly what is it? It depends on, one, how you're viewing it. Because basically media, like all mainstream media, might have you believe that, this particular form of sexual behavior is synonymous with easily coerced virginal big word, add a couple of letters on there, to virgin, virginal, clumsy, writer, or has no boundaries. But is that exactly what it is? Is that going to the extreme of it? That might just be that. Now, sexual submission is far more consensual, collaborative, fun, and sexy. It just turns you on. You might not have to do it all the time, but every so often a little roughness in the bed takes that kink to another level, which is it's all well and good, and it is fun. So do it. Don't ever hold yourself back from trying things. Just plan ahead and, look into it before you kind of just flat out throw it out there to your partner. Especially since it's something that you have never done before with them. So, now, obviously the S in BDSM is the submission part. And it takes place, as it is defined here, takes place within a kinky contents when someone takes on a more or the only dominant role and someone else takes on a more or only submissive role. Now, the way of looking at this would be the roles don't change. One partner is always submissive while the other one is dominant. There are other pairings where that title and role will swap. But for the most part, the roles are set in it when it comes to it. And it's funny because a lot of people believe that being submissive is the same thing as being on the bottom. Or being a bottom, if you want to call it that. But it isn't. Bottom actually there's a little bit of overlap, but bottom actually refers to someone who's physically on the bottom during sex. And obviously, when you think of this, you think of the missionary position. That person who may also be identified as a bottom to not only describe their sexual preference. Usually one who receives the penetration, but at times too, it basically will indicate your social role and sexual identity. Hence, in a submissive position or missionary, women are usually on the bottom. So we are put into a role right then and there in a glass. So think of it that way. There's generally not a power exchange with this. It's just, someone's on the top, someone's on the bottom. There's no power in that, no dominance. But it is considered that way because our roles in the sexual bed go that way. So, and just to let you know, submission is about giving and or receiving of the power during sex. That person who is submissive can now be on top. Well, can be on top or wherever. And this is more of a servicing of your partner during sex, whereas the skill that submissive person is very skilled at something that the dominant partner likes a lot, and hence they will, doesn't matter where it is, top, bottom, or indifferent, it just happens to do that. Now, this isn't a one-size-fits-all deal. It is consensual and should be consensual because this is a form of giving up the control or your control to someone who is dominant. So you need to feel very comfortable with doing that. Now, you need to realize also that at one point in time, everybody has played a dominant or a submissive role. Who's ever on top feels powerful, or who is ever in control at that and during that sex act is considered that dominant person, that dominant figure, that dominant partner. So don't ever think that you don't do it. It might not be as full-fledged as going into it full force with, dominance and working it all the way up to BDSM. It happens. It's just something that happens during natural sexual intercourse or sexual encounters. So basically, there are positions that it is in where you're in that submissive, that dominant moment. And one of those moments is where your partner pins your arms behind your back during doggy style, or pulls your hair during missionary. They're getting some sort of control. There are other acts of spitting in your mouth or spanks you on the butt, calls you greedy or my slut, or little girl. There's so many things. There's so many different ors or ands and things out there that you can think of. There is, in the traditional sex, that invokes or that may invoke elements of submission and dominance. And it comes down to that. That's a regular doggy style position, but your partner grabs your arms and holds them behind you and, throws some words out at you, or you have just become submissive and your partner has become dominated. So, and this is as long as everything is consensual, everything is okay. You may not count it under, consider it that BDSM, but if it's a kinkier version of sex from start to finish, and it's a bit of a scene that you're putting on with your partner, you're acting out these roles, then it will fall underneath that. So don't ever think that you are not doing it. Here's a couple of scenes that are spoken out where people have tried these. One scene, it may entail one partner spanking another 10 times and then increasing it, actually. And you're intensifying with the goal of getting to a 7 or 10 on the pain scale. So they're spanking you, but in the beginning it's small and low and not hard. And then it starts to intensify, and the pain level goes up. So it's basically increasing, and that's a way of a dominant or a submissive. Another way may be that where it's a little bit more elaborate. Maybe the scene starts with wax play, moves onto your nipple torture, women or men, and ends with orgasm denial, where you are not allowing your partner to orgasm. They had to hold it, not let it go. They're not to enjoy it. Or it could just work as, flogging. You have that little hand flogger and you're spanking your partner. And that partner is getting extremely turned on by it. And orgasms from it, who's to say? So, there are submissive dominant relationships that are ongoing relationships. And they're generally called 24/7 DS or lifestyle DS. And this falls under the umbrella of BDSM. And with this means that there's no break in the power exchange. It remains one submissive, one dominant. And it's the majority of the time like that. I mean, DS is described, it's just shorthand to describe a relationship where someone leads the dominant and someone follows the submissive. So even if you look at how they write it, it's a capital D / a small c. D is capitalized to show the authority, show the dominance, showing that is overshadowing the S in that. So it is, there are different reasons why it's done. But on that note, we are going to take our first break in the show. And when we come back, we will continue on this subject and then move on to some ways in there and some sexual mind control. So, at the break, please take your time and get yourself a snack and a drink. Come back, get relaxed. You prop your feet up on that ottoman and that lovely lazy boy, or just on the couch relaxing with a nice blanket and a fluffy pillow in your big fluffy slippers. But do get comfortable because I will meet you back here for more sex talk with Andra.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman. Welcome back from after our break. I hope you are comfy and have a drink and a snack of your choice by your side. And maybe even your favorite sex toy. Completely up to you. But we are continuing our topic of sex control, dominance, submission, sexual mind control. And we are going to pick up where we left off before the break. So let's get down and dirty. Now, when it comes to that sexual dominance or sexual submission, they don't always have to, have that. It could be something on how they tell you how you're going to act during the day, or things that you're going to do during the day. They're like service-based. Service-based sexual control and dominance or submission usually comes in the form like providing a massage or a manicure, or doing the chores around the house, and acting like a butler or a French maid. Depends on what your partner has in mind, the dominant partner. Generally, this particular situation is with two individuals who live together, but obviously there are different ways. You may not live together, but you come over there a lot, and when you do come over, you must adhere to those dominant and submissive roles. So it's something to look at. A lot of people get into this particular sexual allure for different reasons. Usually the power boss, because they're in the workplace and they're very important, and you want that to come into the bedroom where they tell you what to do, and they make the decisions for you. Somebody else is taking control. And that could be either way. If you are the boss and when you get home you're like, I don't want to do this, let somebody else be the boss. This is where this works out. Now, it is a reprieve and gives a break to that partner who always has to make the decisions. This is not the only type of partnership in DS. Some people are really, and I've discussed this in earlier sessions, where they're turned on by the sheer fact of how taboo or the wrong play they are providing is considered in society. Like, if it's bad in society, the thrill of performing that, knowing that society views it that way, is bad. So they'll continue to do it because it's a turn on, it's a strength, it's a dominance. And it's just basically, it's where you want to be and how you want to show them how defiant you really are. Others find satisfaction in serving their partners or in another individual altogether. It's obviously different than those who show a form of romance to their partners that they love. And this is a way for them to show that love through the acts of service. So they come and they'll give you a massage. Well, that's an act of service in dominant, submissive relationship. Believe it or not, there are some people who experience the act of submitting as a spiritual or a healing to them of their soul, and others just like the adventure and the experience of the physicality of it and the sensation. Because there is a sensation that comes along with it. There's a bit of pain, but that increase in that pain is a turn on, which can ignite an orgasm. Now, over time, everybody has different needs and desires because we change and things shift and we got to go in other different directions. Now, the types of physical sensation that do change, it is, I'm tongue-tied today. Jeez, I can't get that word out. It's like as we age, our hormones change. And there's a bit, of a difference in the comfort level that we feel with our partners, or the playmates, or whoever you have. So these things are some of those physical things that actually affect this type of relationship. Because you do change. You get older. Your interests change. You don't want to do that anymore, or it's getting uncomfortable now. You've got to say something. So now, how do you know if it's something you want to try? I heard somebody ask that question. Really, you really have to think about how you want to feel in the end with it. So think about what arouses you. Think about what turns you on. And then just basically begin to build your kinky persona through feelings rather than actions, so that now they're being transformed. And that's the way you can decide if this is, is that something I like? Is that something I want to do? And you go about it that way. Is it going to give you that pleasure you are seeking beyond what you are already engaging in sexually? Identifying and establishing your limits is very, 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 very key. Now, they do give a way in which you can establish these limits. And it's what you're into and not into is make a yes, no, maybe list. Now, a yes, no, maybe list is actually a physical list. It's a mental list. It being in your head and you thinking about it constantly will not work. You need it written down on paper. Physical form of it so you can be reminded, because you can see it, you can touch it, everything. Now, things you definitely want to try, this is what we're putting on here. Things you definitely want to try, or to do or try sexually, goes in the yes column. Things you might want to try with more research and under the right circumstances goes in the maybes column. And things that are completely outside of your comfort zone, or triggering to you in a bad way, not a good way, that goes right into the no column. No hesitations. Now these yes, no, maybe inventory lists, and these are, if you go on to Scarlettine or Bex Talks Sex, it's BEX, Talks Sex, really good places to start if you're going to make this list, because they give you some ideas there. So do go to them. If you're with a partner, both of you should make a list, because in this way, later you're going to compare it. Okay, now, if you're single, you can make one just for you. And if and when you find that partner that you want to be with, you can communicate this to your partner, your interests. You can negotiate with them what's on or off limits during sex and things like that. So communication should be ongoing. That should never, ever, ever stop. And that's one of the biggest things out there All play, kinky or otherwise, must be consensual and pre-negotiated ahead of time. What are safe words and signals, and why are they important? If you notice, there is a trend in sex. Safe words, signals so that you know to stop. And they do define them for you, which is a safe word is something either partner can use to signal when a mental, physical, or emotional boundary is approaching or has been crossed. Now, yellow and red are generally the standard safe words for anyone engaging in this. So, obviously, yellow means slow down. Red, stop. That's not going to happen. And that's very, very good to maintain. Use your yellows when you want the action to slow. See? Or, slow down, or your partner is nearing your pain, humiliation climax. Reds, obviously, when you want to stop or pause. And you need a little aftercare or hydration. Please do stop and respect those safe words, because they are very, very important. You don't want them to get up and just turn around and say to you, stop. You might be offended by that. This is all fun. For those individuals who are already in a scene-based around this dominant submission, and where you're doing something to the submissive individual, submissive partner, that the submissive doesn't want, the word stop may be part of the submissive's performance. So you gotta remember that. So, if stop is part of all that submissive dominance role playing, then you've got to pick another word. One that is way off the whacker and not related at all, so you don't get confused with anything. Now, physical codes are extremely important. And the reason why that is because someone may go mute and have a hard time speaking up when they get into a certain physical, mental, or emotional state. Now, something like pinching someone's leg or squeezing someone's hand for 3+ seconds. This may feel like easier way to advocate yourself, finding something that gets their attention right off the bat. But safe words should always be done, and you should never ever not speak up. And make sure that your moans count. How often should this yes, no, maybe list be revisited, or whatever? Because you're really having, if you're going to the list, you're going through the motions, you're educating, you're communicate, and you're consenting. It's very, very, you're negotiating what and what can't to make that happen between the two of you. So it is very important that every time you go to that list to pick one, this happens. So, if your partner doesn't want to try something, or vice versa, you could be the best couple. This is, it's always going to come to that point where one person wants to try something and the other one doesn't. That is quite inevitable. Each person's desires are different. This is not bad. It's not wrong. It's not right. It's not good. It's not whatever. but it has to be consensual, and it comes down to that. And talk, and when you do talk, please talk when you are fully dressed. It takes away from any seriousness that you guys are trying to talk about. So that's where all of that comes from. There are other things here, like you can share fantasy, then go a little deeper with it by where you want to be pegged. You can affirm your partner's boundaries, ask them questions, any questions, if you're a little bit worried or anything like that, if you're pegging. You can wear a butt plug there, like, see if you can find a middle ground, whereas you go out and get that sex toy. And you try that wearing that butt plug. Say that 5 times fast. Which might get you to be a little bit more, okay, I'm used to this, and okay, maybe I can try what that my partner wants to try. Exploring anal masturbation on your own, if that's something that partner wants to do. Obviously, penetrating yourself with a dildo while your partner uses a vibrator. You're going back and forth with this so that you come to a good and comfortable term with your fantasy. And then, like, if your partner ties you up, have them spank you while you're tied up. Now, these are all good things for the beginner. So let's move it on. But before I move on, we are going to take a break in the show. And I want you to either remain relaxed and continue with what you're doing, or replenish your drink, replenish your snack, come back, get relaxed, and I will meet you back here for more Sex Talk with Andra.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, with a topic about sex. It's from the point of view of an older woman. Welcome back from the break. Hope you guys are comfortable, because we're going to continue on with our dominant, submissive, mind control sex. So it's fun sex. And give it a beginner's guide. Now I'm going to give you some games to play. Games are always fun. You always want that better orgasm, that better sexual encounter. So why not play them? have some little games you can play with it. So, as we start off, you make sure that you keep in mind with these that domination and submission are pretty wide categories, and they can mean different things to different people. So, just be careful when you do it. So, the first game on our list is the Dom Worship. This is considered one of the easiest ways to play around with the domination and submission. And it is, it is to spend an entire evening catering to the dominant partner. The submission's attention is solely on that dominant person. They may set up the room in a way that would please the dominant individual, give a full body massage, dress up in dominant's favorite clothes, who's to say, may perform oral sex, or just letting the dominant individual choose exactly what they want in each and every moment of the act. The submissive partner does not get their views taken, and they get no attention of their own. So basically, you are doing all the work as a submissive. Nothing's being done to you, and you are watching your partner being pleasured by you and coming to a full-fledged orgasm, but won't allow you to do so. Next one is slave training. Now, they consider this one of the simple games to play. And this is when you are just starting to ease your way into this particular type of sex with the domination and the submission. There are some rules. Well, actually, it's not so much a game, it's a set of rules that the submissive has to follow. And they go as follows. The sub can only obey instructions. They must do everything they are told. And knowing ahead of time that these were agreed upon. The next thing is that the submissive cannot do anything of their own accord. Refrain from doing what you want. The submissive can't speak unless spoken to. The sub cannot make any eye contact unless it is requested by the dominant partner. Now, next one is prove your devotion. Now, generally this particular one are for individuals, partners, that have not yet had a conversation about boundaries. So, this is a way in which this particular game helps you to open up. So this way you do it. You have the submissive make a list of everything they're willing to do to the dominant partner. Think about it in terms of how the submissive partner could prove their subservience to their dominant. Alright? So, now we are going to include sexual things like allow your dominant partner to penetrate you anally, or allow the dominant to wake you up, in the middle of the night just to have sex. That's it. The submissive can also include things that are not explicitly sexual. I will wear a collar during the day, or I will do chores around the house, little things like that. Next one is you get pick your punishment. Now, this is one of the fundamentals of this relationship. This is one of the simplest, considered one of the simplest, but most effective ways of taking your dominant submissive relationship up a little bit, in the kinky words. How in the same way that beginner submissives can get started making a list of ways to prove their devotion. They can also make a list of forms of punishment that they will accept if they get out of line. Now, here are some ideas on how the submissive can be punished. And obviously, most people probably know what the first one is, which is a spanking with a hand, paddle, belt, whip, or other item. Having nipple clamps applied. Not allowed to orgasm. Not being allowed any sort of contact. Getting a certain task to perform can be explicitly sexual, like giving oral sex, or not, like doing the laundry, service. Remember service. Having to start from the beginning with a specific task. Being called a name. Now, they do have a new pair of nipple clamps, apparently, on Amazon, and they are called 50 Shades of Gray, the Pinch Nipple Clamps. Okay, I think this particular movie and book has gone quite far enough now. It's okay, I can't even say that that's interesting. I don't know why that would surprise me that they have this, but moving right along. Master May I, very popular game in this world. Very simple. The submissive has to ask permission from the dominant for every single thing they're going to do. Doesn't matter if you are just wiggling your foot, you got to ask to do it. Now, this could be wherever you want. Most things that a lot of people will tell them to do is take off your clothes, move your body, touch your dominant. Or you could try it out. So that's in the bedroom. Outside of the bedroom, where the submissive can ask for permission to use the restroom, eat, or go outside. Master, may I come? Now it has escalated up. Now, the Master, may I and the Master, may I come? It's taking that first game down here, but what happens is the submissive has to ask the dominant permission to orgasm. If you orgasm without permission, you get punished. So, ways of looking at it. Now, I like this because it says that the dominant can be extra sneaky by trying to get the submissive to orgasm, but not giving them permission to do so. So there are ways to fudge the issue, so to speak. Another game is Do Your Chores. So, we are really just working this out. Now, the next one is to do your chores. They actually said this one could be played in a single day or an ongoing, whereas I would believe it would be played. The dominant assigns the submissive certain chores to do. Now, there are some examples that they give, and one of them is spend 30 minutes performing oral sex, scrub the entire floor on your hands and knees, make a meal, and it depends. This particular thing really depends on how far the dominant wants to go with it, and basically they can put on the intensity of what it is, how they could be just sitting there and they're telling you to do that so that they can masturbate and by watching you, because it is that turn on for them. So who is to say? It's really up. Now once all these things are done, especially chores, the dominant can inspect, get the white glove test out. So they will do that. 8 is to get a reward. Alright? This is generally only done if the dominant partner is feeling generous. And by so feeling generous, can let their submissive know what they're going to get as a reward. Now, there are conditional rewards. Now, your dominant partner can create rewards. It's more power which is going to be exerted by the dominant partner. The submissive can get their reward, but they will still have to perform some task or punishment at the same time. So they're going to get it, but you're still going to do this. So now we have the point system. Now with this is usually played around with chores and rewards to come up with a point system. The dominant can assign a certain number of points for specific chores or tasks, whatever they have you doing. And there are certain points for certain rewards. Obviously, we usually do this when it comes to being at the fair. This is considered one of the good beginner's games if this is something that you want to start. It's considered that because the submissive can have a lot of say in what they do. And you can slowly break down if there's to be no communication or whatever, you can break it down while doing this. Immobilization. Now, this is where the lovely restraints come in, and not everybody is into them. They may be into them, but still feel a loss of power with where having them on because they really can't do anything. This is a way for the dominant to actually show or showcase their dominance over the submissive. And it's basically immobilizing hand, feet, or both. Obviously can be done in a restraint system, bondage tape, or bondage rope. And the dominant is basically in control as to when they can be taken off. So, another game is role-playing, which always comes in with this particular topic. And there are a lot of ways that you could play. You could play King or Queen and Humble Servant, famous celebrity and personal assistant, teacher and student, which is always a favorite for everyone, cop and robber, detective and criminal, kidnapper and kidnapping victim, pirate and hapless sailor, John and prostitute. Got a lot to work with. I'm sure you can add some on to that. Now we are on scheduled servitude. You can take these roles outside of the bedroom with this, and you can schedule specific times that the submissive will be available to their dominant partner. So, it may be a date or a block of time in a day. You gotta really kind of sort of make that one up for yourself. And when you come up with your own specifications for what it means for the submissive to be ready. And the example would be the submissive might have to prepare to be penetrated at any time, or they might be expected to sit quietly until given a command. Lot of control. These are great little dominance and submission games to play. It might be a way of, this is what you really want to try and get into, a way of breaking the ice and finding out. On that note, we will take the last break in the show, and completely up to you if you want to get a snack or a drink again, or if you just want to stay there and finish out the dirty deed. I will be back to meet you here for more sex talk with Andra.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Andra, where the topic about sex is from the point of view of an older woman. Welcome back to the final portion of the show for today, where our topic is sexual control, which leads us to the dominant and the submissive roles. Now, we can go into sex and mind control, which is a powerful combination. But at one point in this, we will talk about sociopaths, because this is how individuals get into sex cults and stuff. Because generally, when we talk about sex and mind control, there are those who would like to be able to use mind control to get more sex, and those actually using mind control for this purpose. Now, there are two groups. The first group is a reflection of the poor state of our society. Tear. When people have to deceive and trick others to having sex with them. Obviously, not a lot of them are very successful in that, but hey, they have to try. The second group is extremely more dangerous. The people whom mind control and manipulation comes naturally are often psychopaths, and they are often very, very good. So, what are the details of sexual mind control? How does it work? They're using the word sociopath. Don't read into it, but they compare them to chameleons. And the reason why is because that they blend in with the people they are with. They make friends very quickly and can really work a room, basically. And that's why everybody starts trusting them, and they want to do anything for them. Now, these can be a group of individuals, which is generally called a cult, or in a one-on-one relationships. The results for both are similar. There is idolization of a psychopath by the victim, and obviously that individual will encourage the adoration, and the victims often consider that the person is a fantastic partner, enlightened, superhuman, and so on. They can do no wrong. Obviously, these individuals manipulate people's emotions, and this is how you get to that mind control in sex. And it recognizes that sex and mind control are a powerful combination, and they are. They can convert that relationship into a sexual one. They begin to have much more control that way, because the person has opened themselves up to more. They've allowed themselves to become vulnerable, and that they're opening up more in an intimate way. So, and it's also where it's more committed, like that. Now, there's when you're blinded by emotion. Sex and mind control are a potent mixture used by usually bad people, but you can use it too, but in a nice way. And it's to build that strong bond with your partner, and obviously it can vary all the way up to domestic violence and the like, where it's not where you want to begin. Now, it's just as that person grows, the idea of having that kind of sex, probably it would deteriorate. Obviously, sex and mind control is used in many cults to maintain control and manipulate the members. Now we know this. These cult leaders know that an individual's sexuality comes with an enormous amount of power. So, now there are those lovely sex cults out there, and the sexual mind control that they use is destructive and very varied. So, I mean, an example would be some groups advocate chastity. Although not bad for what you're hearing, but it's a form of control over that woman's body. So, I mean, there's the other the extreme in sex cults is the idea of free love. And is it free love or is it manipulated love? So remember that when you're getting through with these and you're going through them, I think you can find better ways to address it or do it, whatever. So please do think of that. This mind control, this sex and, mind control, now the leader, with that, they can use it because the leaders in that particular situation will prostitute the women to earn money. New members can earn favors with politicians, and you're getting money. They're making money. It's almost a way of blackmailing a person in office, like in a power. And that is punishable by jail or fine or whatever, but I'm sure it is. So, now, when it comes back down to the individual, that sociopath, well, psychopath, shall I say, they actually want power, control, and sex, and mind control. But this sex and mind control gives them easy access to to things, so they just take them. They don't care. They're the dominant, and everybody is in that cult is following his lead, his or hers. I've never seen there was one female. I think she was in a cult. I know she was in the mafia. So that could be in a cult too at one point. Alright, then the results of sex and mind control. The combination of the two is never good for here is the victims, or it might be totally different for the woman here, and where they're liking it and want more of it. So, gotta just educate, communicate, relax. It might be in a cult, might be one-on-one relationship. You go in to see a therapist as a client, and they look at you and they get attracted to you. There's an imbalance of power there. So, you don't want to get into that. Now, they actually give a way to get rid of undoing of mind control. It's just those who have suffered sexual abuse have special considerations, obviously. They may have amnesia for traumatic events. They may initially identify it and not want to discuss it. So, what do? They have to really recuperate in order to do it. So, now, these are effects of suffering, of suffered sex and control, mind control, sexual mind control. Individuals who are, or who have suffered from it. And these are the effects. They can either be acute, delayed, or chronic. Ambivalence is number one, which is a contradictory of feelings towards the abuser or the partner, because mind control is like feeling as though they're raping you. Next one is guilt, about being betrayed or exposing that individual, as well as taking all the blame for the abuse. Emptiness is another. It's emptiness and isolation. When somebody is sexually mind controlled, they are so dependent that the feel of loss when no longer with that particular individual. Self-confusion. You always have contradictory thoughts and feelings and beliefs. Grown up one way, get kidnapped, grown up another way. So, difficulty in trusting others. They got it very wrong once. How will they now in the future? Then it's identify and role reversal. Emotional liability, which is the sudden unexpected emotions, which can be very intense. Then you have your suppressed rage, depression and suicidal risks, cognitive dysfunction. Now, don't get caught. Very, very important. Sex and mind control are a powerful combination. And here it states, the mind control allows a sexual relationship to develop. And once it becomes sexual mind control, the level of power and domination by the one of the partners increases tremendously, because now they have it. Now what do they do with it? So, these are ways to be looking at this. Now, I mean, you all want to try something new. Everybody does. You're hesitant. You don't want to say anything to your partner because you think he'll laugh at you, or she'll laugh at you, or he'll laugh at you, or she'll laugh at you. So you don't ask. It can't force you into asking, but the best thing to do is to ask. It's very, very important. It's very important that you discuss it. Very, very important. And once you've discussed it and came to some agreement on the security aspect of it, I guess, try bringing out that yes, no, maybe list as an icebreaker. Simple as that. It's just something that you really need to discuss with your partner. And on that note, that is the end of the show. I thank you again for tuning into the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like for you to subscribe to the show and leave a good feedback. Also find us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are there. Like us and put a comment. Put something you'd like to hear discussed here. So again, have an awesome sex night. Remember to educate, communicate, and consent if trying something new. And practice safe sex. If not for your partner, for yourself, and vice versa. You do not want to find out the hard way. So, good night for now, and until next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast.